So I am filming this video from the outskirts of Hanoi, Vietnam. We just arrived here in Vietnam about 2 days ago, which means that I have officially been to 9 different countries since the start of 2023. 9 countries in 2 years is a pretty remarkable feat for me personally. However, in all of these places that I've visited, one country has shocked me more than any other country. And that country was the United States of America. My home country provided me with the most potent form of culture shock I have ever experienced in my life up to this point. And for a lot of Americans who are living abroad and returning to the US, whether temporarily or permanently, they find the same to be true. Bearing that in mind, in this video, I will be reacting to reverse culture shocks from my fellow Americans. So without further ado, let's get into this first video.
We just landed in America and it's my first time here in like 5 years. First crime committed already. We bought 2 waters, a bagel with cream cheese, and a milk for my son. $20.
$20. Let me hear what she got again.
Waters, a bagel with cream cheese, and a milk for my son. $20.
A bagel with cream cheese, 2 waters, and a milk for her son. $20. $20.
And then I saw some crusty, dusty sandwiches for like $17 and some change. That is a crime.
People probably think I exaggerate about the cost of living in the US. When I tell you the cost of living in the US for any place that people actually want to be. So I'm not talking about, no offense to anybody from this place, but anyone from the middle of North Dakota. That's not a place that people want to be. Places like LA, San Francisco, New York, Miami, so on and so forth, this is the rule rather than the exception. $17 for this crusty, dusty, musty sandwich. Is that meat even cooked? It damn near still looks raw. And then that's that artificial American cheese. $17. You cannot make this up. Now, to be fair, based on the description of this TikTok, she said that she's at the airport, and I think based on this right here, she's at LAX. So LAX is pretty expensive. I found that San Francisco airport is actually even more expensive. We flew through San Francisco on our way to Thailand from Dallas, and I want to say I spent somewhere in the ballpark of $15-ish for a regular sandwich. Now, granted, I'm vegan. Vegan food tends to cost more no matter where you are, except for the Netherlands, which is part of the reason why I love the Netherlands so much. But in no world should you be paying this much for a sandwich. No world at all. Those are Switzerland prices. Switzerland is the only place I've seen that had a comparable cost of living, but at least in Switzerland you actually get what you pay for. This is not worth $17 at all. This in Vietnam would probably cost something like $1.50 at most. On to the next video.
Some reverse culture shock, or should I just say culture shock, moments that I'm having as an American who recently moved back to the US after almost a decade of living in Europe. I lived in Austria for a while, and before that I lived in London, and these are some things that I'm just like, still need to wrap my head around. Okay,
So even within Europe, of course, all European countries have more in common with each other than any of them do with the US. But London and Austria are going to provide you with 2 completely different experiences. I've been to London, I haven't been to Austria. I do want to go because it seems like a very pleasant place to be, kind of along the lines of a Switzerland actually. So if you're from Austria, let me know in the comments where in Austria I should go.
First one is how quickly servers try to kick you out of a restaurant when you're having like a nice meal. I know that this is just how the industry is, but like I will be at a nice restaurant, you're getting dressed up, you're trying to have a nice experience, and the servers will bring you the check before you're even done eating your food or you're done your drinks. And
then they'll passively aggressively say, "Oh, no pressure, no rush." Yeah, there is pressure. You are rushing me. You're bringing out this check and we've been here for 30 minutes. Now, again, to her point, that is somewhat justifiable given their circumstances. I'm not blaming the servers for doing this, but the whole restaurant industry needs an overhaul in the US. If having non-free refills, if having to pay for every refill means that servers get an actual livable wage and they don't rush you to lower their turn times, which, if you don't know what a turn time is, basically they time you as a server for how long each group stays at one of your tables, and you want to keep your turn times as low as possible. I think when I worked at IHOP when I was 16 years old, you ideally wanted to have a turn time of 45 minutes or something like that, which, I mean, 45 minutes, I know probably 1,000 Europeans watching this just collectively gasped when I said that. But that's the reality of the American restaurant industry. It's broken. It's broken.
I know that in the US, servers live off tips and they're trying to flip tables so they can make more money. But like, I'm still chewing my food and they will bring the check and then circle around the table to make sure that I'm ready to pay so they can shuffle me out and get the next table in. And I just feel like it's a little bit rude because we're spending so much money to be out at that restaurant and to have that experience. And in Europe, like, you have to ask for the check. And I know that Europeans make more hourly wage, but I just got used to that. Like, it's supposed to be an experience, right? So like, I don't want to feel rushed. A second one is...
And also, to add to that, whenever you do put your card in the little check thing, they take your card away and they take it to the back room and they can just do whatever with it, which, now that I think about it, I grew up around that, so to me it was normal. But when I think about it from a logical perspective, I can see how that would spook a lot of people out. But again, they really need to fix the restaurant industry in the US.
How expensive beauty-related services are here, especially hair. Why does a half head of highlights cost $350, $400? In an expensive...
Wait, so obviously I'm a guy. I don't really do a whole lot of highlights and things of that nature. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. I just don't do that. $350 to $400 is crazy. I mean, absolutely diabolical. I thought my haircuts were expensive in the US at $35 a piece. $350 is crazy. I think when I would get my hair braided when I was younger, that was something like $80, $70, $80, something like that. And they would braid your hair so tight that your head would be sore for the next 3 days. But for $80, I didn't mind because that just meant they lasted longer. I didn't know it was that expensive. Let me know in Europe, if you've ever gotten that kind of service done, how much that costs. Or maybe if you're a guy, how much that costs for your wife or your daughter or whoever else. Because that is crazy.
European city, you're paying like maybe $160, $180 for a half head of highlights.
Even that sounds steep to me. I didn't know this was so expensive. I feel like being a woman is just generally very expensive.
And this is what I don't understand. It's the same products. It's the same service. It's the same amount of time with the same highly skilled, qualified professional. So why is it so much more expensive here? Like when I lived in London, I paid around $130 for a half head of highlights, and that was including tip. In London.
That just reminded me of this other video I reacted to recently. You might know which video I'm talking about, where the girl said that she literally would fly from, I think it was Berlin, maybe? Berlin or Barcelona, one of those two places. I think she would fly from there to London to get her hair done because it was cheaper than just getting her hair done in that actual city. So that's probably also very location dependent. It's very localized within Europe. But I'm not gonna lie, if I was a woman, I think I would just never get any of that done because there's no way, no universe I'm paying that much money for anything beauty related.
The third is how flaky Americans are. I forgot how flaky Americans are. Like, if you make plans with somebody here, you've got to confirm those plans a few different times to make sure that that person is going to actually follow through. In Austria and in Germany.
So that one right there, that one might be a little more group specific because that was never... Actually, no, that's kind of a lie. I think a few of my friends were kind of flaky somewhat growing up, but I didn't really encounter a whole lot of flakiness until I started dating in the US. That's when things got very, very frustrating for me. Was I would make plans with a girl and suddenly they just stop responding. It's like, okay. Then they'd send me that text, oh, you're gonna hate me, but can we just not go? And I'd be like, you cannot go, I'm going. I remember one time, I literally had a date scheduled with this girl. We were supposed to meet up at this acai bowl place. I'm kind of just venting right now if you can't tell, but we were supposed to meet at this acai bowl place. And I was literally dressed and in the car. And that's when she texted me that she wasn't going to be able to make it. I went by myself. I had a very good acai bowl. It was expensive. It was something like $15. Again, crazy American prices. But had my acai bowl. And then I told her, oh, the acai bowl was really good. I appreciate you for telling me about this place. And she was like, you went without me? Yes, I went without you. Of course I went without you. I was dressed. I was going to that acai bowl place come hell or high water. Once I'm dressed and in the car, I'm going. But I feel like in the Netherlands at least, and I guess she's going to speak more about the places that she's been, but in the Netherlands, flakiness isn't really as prevalent because people are planning things much longer in advance. They're planning 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So you better show up.
German-speaking countries, when you make plans with somebody, those are set plans. Like, they're writing that in their calendar. They're expecting to see you. Here, it's like you're not really sure if those plans are going to happen or not. I remember when I first moved to Austria, I was meeting a German friend for drinks, and it had been a couple of weeks in advance, and I remember I hadn't heard from her. So the night before we were supposed to meet for drinks, I texted her just to confirm, and she was like, yeah, of course I'll see you tomorrow. Like, why? Is something wrong, or is everything okay? And I was just like thinking to myself, no, I haven't heard from you. Like, I wasn't sure if I was going to see you. That's just how it is there. Like, they are obsessed with making plans, and once it's in their calendar, it's like a set plan. Which actually brings me to something that I found a little bit annoying. In German-speaking countries, they make plans so far in advance that, like, if you want to see your friend...
So it's not just a Dutch thing then. So they do that in Austria as well, and probably in Germany. Because I think I have heard that Germany is another country where they tend to really, really plan things out, and they value orderliness and things of that nature. Which I do resonate with that on one hand, but I am a very spontaneous person as well. So I can see that going both ways. But I don't know, I guess I didn't really make a whole lot of friends while in the Netherlands, so can't really speak too much to that point.
For a casual one-on-one hangout, like just for a coffee or whatever, you've got to make plans with them weeks and weeks in advance, or else you're not going to see them. Because in that part of the world, people are so obsessed with plans. They're so booked and busy. There's no room for spontaneity or like random hangouts. Whereas here, you'll hit up your friend on a random Tuesday and be like, hey, you want to, like, I don't know, go for a walk or watch a movie tonight or whatever. You just hang out with your friends to rot on the couch and just chill and do nothing. Whereas there, you have to like make plans for that, which is kind of crazy. There's more. I'm gonna have to make a part 2, but if you are European, I would love to hear what your culture shocks are coming to the US, or if you're an American that lives abroad in Europe specifically, what have been your reverse culture shock?
So again, I didn't make a whole lot of friends in Europe, but there was one guy in particular, and if you're watching this, you know who you are. Shout out to you. I did not flake on you, I promise. I know I'm probably adding to that stereotype, but basically there was this guy who I met at the gym, and we were supposed to work out. We were supposed to get in a workout together that following week. And we literally ended up leaving. My girlfriend and I ended up leaving that area 2 or 3 days later, unexpectedly. So if you're watching this, that's why we didn't get that workout in. But that was only a week in advance. So, I mean, it's not like everyone abides by those principles. But I will say that spontaneity doesn't seem to be as big of a thing in Europe. But I also think part of this is age related. I feel like younger people in general tend to be more spontaneous because they have more free time. Whereas once you hit a certain age, when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and onward, you might have a family, you might have work obligations, things of that nature, travel plans. you have obligations that your average 13 or 14-year-old simply are not going to be making. So I think that plays into it as well, because I find it hard to believe that 13-year-old German teenagers are making plans 4 weeks in advance to hang out with their friends. That's probably not the case, but could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. On to the next video.
2 of the biggest reverse culture shocks I get when I come back to the United States. And for context, I spend the majority of my time working and traveling in other countries, and I talk about it on my page. Number 1 is our party food. Celebrations, birthdays, picnics, game nights. It tends to be very heavy and processed. Think things like wings, pizza, chips and dip, casseroles, and it's often pre-prepared or delivered. By contrast, in other countries where you have less of the convenience culture, delivery culture, the food tends to be part of the celebration itself. Everyone gets together, cooking, fresh food, ingredients, and it tends to be a lot healthier.
So, personally, I'm not much of a party goer. I'm an introvert. I don't go to social gatherings pretty much ever when I can avoid them. But I will say, on the rare occasions that I have gone to social gatherings, let's say family reunions or things of that nature, in the US, the food generally was cooked. It wasn't delivered, but it wasn't healthy either. Now, granted, my family, at least that side of my family, is from the South. They're from Louisiana and Mississippi primarily. And those are not places that are known for healthy eating. So I guess that tracks, but I will say that for a casual hangout, let's say, for example, if you're going to watch the Super Bowl or something like that, a very American thing to do, people will come together and watch the Super Bowl. Generally, you are going to order food. You're going to order, I don't know, 6 pizzas, a bunch of wings, nachos, things like that. My girlfriend had this thing, I don't even know what you would call it. I wouldn't even call it a party, but just kind of a meetup with her friends where each of them cooked a food from a different culture of their choosing, and they brought all of the cooked food together. And honestly, that's one of the most wholesome things that I've personally seen, but I guess that wasn't an isolated incident. That sort of thing seems more common. And now that I think about it, my girlfriend's little sister, a lot of times she would bring her friends over and they will cook together. So they might make a poke bowl or things of that nature. So yeah, I never really thought about that, but it is true. It seems like Europeans tend to kind of cook for those gatherings more so than ordering.
You're usually going to see a lot more traditional dishes as well. And secondly is the way the United States is a little bit of a nanny state and very rigid with the rules. It makes sense. We live in lawsuit nation. Everything has a disclaimer and a warning on it. But I found that coupled with how individualistic people are, is that it can feel really suffocating to live here sometimes. An example is living in an apartment complex in the United States. If your neighbor is making noise, a standard American response is, let's call the cops. Whereas in other countries,
You know what? I never really thought about that, but that is true. Because I remember when I was around 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, my family and I lived in this apartment complex. And I'm a night owl by nature. I've always been a night owl, even when I was young. So I don't really remember what I was doing. I don't particularly remember making that much noise. But suddenly we got a knock at the door in the middle of the night. And of course, I naturally went to my parents' room. I woke my dad up. Hey, Dad, there's someone at the door. And he opens the door, and there's a police officer there in uniform. And the police officer says, yeah, we got a noise complaint. And I guess you can say that's the first and only time I've ever had the police called on me as a 5 or 6 year old. But that is kind of crazy. Now that I think about it, that's kind of a crazy thing to do, just on the basis of somebody making noise on the floor above you. And again, I don't recall doing anything egregious like jumping up and down on the floor or anything like that. Maybe I had the TV on loud or I was walking a lot. I don't know. But that's pretty wild. That's pretty wild.
Attitude is more of, okay, you live in a neighborhood, you live in a society, there's going to be noises. Or let's go talk to them first. Like, we don't need to resort to, state intervention to resolve this problem. I just feel like other countries are a lot more relaxed.
To her point, again, they didn't come and knock on the door first. They just immediately called the cops. And when you think about it, you think about the resources, just utilizing law enforcement resources for that kind of purpose. It's actually incredibly wasteful, but I have a sneaking suspicion, especially based on what she's saying, that that sort of occurrence is a lot more common than people let on. And I don't know why that's the case. Why is that?
And you have a lot more room to just breathe and live and less of a rule fixation.
Yeah, that is one thing that I just don't miss about the US at all. That's not to say that that sort of dynamic doesn't exist anywhere else. I just haven't come across it personally. And of course, again, to be fair, that was an isolated incident for myself. But when you think about how undertrained police officers tend to be in the US, an occurrence like that could go really wrong very, very quickly. So calling the police for something that minor, not only is it wasteful, but in my opinion, it's kind of amoral.